At our wedding reception, my mother-in-law stood up and sneered, "This poor boy thinks he can provide for my daughter. She's just using him until someone better comes along." My bride laughed right along with her. I stayed quiet, but weeks. Later, when they showed up at my house, they got a big surprise. My buddy kept telling me to write this down before I move on with my life. I'm not much of a writer, but here goes nothing. I met Eden 3 years ago at my cousin's party. She was there with a friend we both knew and honestly way out of my league. The kind of girl who turns heads when she walks into a room. We started talking about some Netflix show we both liked. I don't even remember which one now. We exchanged Instagrams, and I thought she was just being nice. But when I messaged her later, she actually responded. Our first date was nothing fancy, just coffee at that popular spot downtown known for its latte art. I was nervous, but she seemed genuinely interested. Asked about my family, hobbies, stuff like that. She told me she worked at a dental office and lived with a roommate in a new apartment complex on the east side. Things moved fast after that. Within 6 months, she was basically living with me in my small 2-bedroom apartment. She'd stay, over 5 nights a week, and had her things all over the place, but kept her apartment because the lease wasn't up. That should have been my first red flag. She never invited me over and always said her roommate didn't like guests. The first time I met her mom, Naomi, was about 8 months in. Eden had been strange about introducing me to her family, but finally arranged a dinner at a fancy restaurant where entrees cost more than I usually spend on groceries. The moment Naomi looked at me, I felt like I was being judged like cattle at an auction. She kept asking pointed questions about my future and career while glancing at my simple Timex watch. When Eden went to the bathroom, Naomi leaned in and said her daughter was used to a certain lifestyle that I probably couldn't provide. I laughed it off, thinking it was a bad joke, but Naomi stayed serious. Eden came back, and the conversation switched to a family vacation in Cabo. Later that night, I told Eden her mom seemed intense, and she just shrugged, saying Naomi was protective because Eden's dad had left them with almost nothing when she was 12. I didn't push it. A year later, I proposed. Nothing fancy, just at the lake where we had our third date. I got down on one knee with a ring I'd saved for months to buy. She seemed genuinely happy, took about 50 selfies for her stories, and immediately called her mom while we were still at the lake. That's when things got weird. Wedding planning changed Eden. Suddenly, everything had to be top tier. The venue was booked 18 months ahead, but somehow, with 4 months' notice, she got us a florist, who usually only did celebrity weddings. I kept worrying about the budget, but Eden said her mom was handling it, so I shouldn't worry. But when the deposit was due, guess whose credit card got charged? Mine. Every single time. When I asked about Naomi's contributions, Eden would get this look like I'd insulted her whole family. She'd say, "Mom's organizing everything. That's her contribution," or "She'll reimburse us later." She never did. My savings were wiped out, then my emergency fund, and even my land fund. Money I'd saved for years to buy property outside the city. I never told Eden about that fund. That detail becomes important later. The wedding day came, and despite everything, I was excited. Eden looked amazing in her dress. The venue was perfect, and even my socially awkward brother didn't say anything weird during his best man speech. Then came the parent toasts. My mom said some sweet things that made me tear up a bit. Then, Naomi stood with her champagne glass, and I swear the temperature dropped 10 degrees. She started by saying she was surprised Eden had brought me home, called me unconventional compared to Eden's past boyfriends, and said Eden had always been attracted to ambitious men, implying I wasn't one. The guests looked uncomfortable, exchanging awkward glances. Then Naomi said something that's replayed in my head for months. "This poor boy thinks he can provide for my daughter. Please, she's just using him until someone better comes along." There was an awful silence, and then Eden laughed. Not nervously or embarrassed, but like her mom had just told the funniest inside joke. I looked at Eden, waiting for her to defend me or say something, anything. But she just smiled at her mom like they shared some secret. My dad halfway stood up, old school and not one to take disrespect, but my mom pulled him down. I just sat there, frozen, smiling on the outside as Naomi finished with a snide comment about enjoying the ride while it lasts, before sitting down. The DJ quickly cranked up the music and announced it was time for our first dance. Eden grabbed my hand like nothing had happened and pulled me onto the floor. I was in shock, going through the motions while my brain tried to process everything. Eden whispered how perfect everything was and how happy she was, while I just nodded like a bobblehead. Later, back in our hotel room, I finally asked Eden what her mom meant by that toast. She rolled her eyes and said I was too sensitive, that her mom had a weird sense of humor that didn't always land well. When I asked why she laughed, she got irritated and said she was just trying to smooth over an awkward moment. I let it drop since it was our wedding night. I didn't want to start married life with a fight, but something inside me shifted, a doubt I hadn't felt before, or maybe had ignored. The honeymoon in Puerto Vallarta was weird. Eden was all smiles and affectionate when taking photos for Instagram, but distant and distracted when we were alone. She kept checking her phone, and when I asked who she was texting so much, she got defensive and accused me of being controlling. We came home and tried to settle into married life, but that doubt kept growing. Eden started talking about buying a house immediately, in one of those gated communities on the north side where all the doctors and lawyers live. When I told her we couldn't afford it, she said her mom promised to help with the down payment. Same story, different day. About 3 weeks after the wedding, I came home early because of a water main break at the job site. Eden didn't hear me come in since she was on the phone in our bedroom. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but when I heard my name, I froze in the hallway. She was laughing with her mom, saying how David has no idea, and Jacob says the market is perfect right now, and something about establishing residency so the prenup won't matter. Jacob, her ex, the one who works in real estate, the guy her mom always brags about as Eden's usual type. I quietly backed away, went outside, then came back in, making enough noise this time. Eden came out of the bedroom, her phone gone, and she looked flustered. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying their conversation, connecting it with Naomi's toast and all the little strange things that never added up. While Eden was asleep beside me, I used her thumb to unlock her phone. She never changed the passcode after I caught her snooping on mine months ago. What I found made me sick. Texts with her mom planning this whole thing. Texts with Jacob way too friendly for just an ex. Screenshots of my credit report she ran without telling me. And research on divorce laws about property and assets. They'd been playing me from the start. The plan was to use my steady income and good credit to get a mortgage, establish residency, then divorce me once the prenup expired so Jacob could move in. I wanted to wake her up right then. But something stopped me. Shock, maybe, or the realization I'd been living with a stranger for 3 years. I decided to play the long game. What Eden and Naomi didn't know was I wasn't as financially clueless as they thought. Yeah, I blew my savings on the wedding, but that land fund? It wasn't just a fund. I'd already bought 5 acres outside the city 3 years before I met Eden, paid in full with the deed in my name. I'd been saving to build on it, but never told her, partly because I always had a feeling she wasn't truly invested in our future. The next morning, I acted normal, kissed Eden goodbye, then called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. I spent the day making calls, first to a lawyer to know my rights, then to my buddy who runs a construction crew, and finally to my bank to lock down my accounts. I played the perfect clueless husband, agreeing when Eden suggested house hunting, nodding along as she showed me listings way out of our budget, and pretending to believe her when she said her mom would help. Meanwhile, I was setting a plan, in motion that would give Eden and Naomi exactly what they deserved. A huge surprise. But that's a story for next time because this is already too long, and my buddy just texted me to help move a couch he bought off Facebook Marketplace. Classic. This blew up overnight. Thanks for all the awards and comments. I'll post part 2 after work. Edit for everyone asking, yes, this is real. No, I'm not making it up for karma. Trust me, I wish it was fiction. Update part 2. After that wedding reception disaster, I was in a weird mental place. You know that feeling when you stare at your ceiling fan at 3 a.m., wondering how your life got so messed up? That was me every night after hearing Eden laugh at her mom's speech. I kept going through the motions. Wake up, coffee, work, come, home, watch whatever Eden wanted on Netflix, bed, repeat, but inside it was chaos. Every time Eden smiled at her phone or mentioned her mom calling, my stomach twisted. One morning, about 2 weeks after overhearing the phone call, I caught another one. Eden left her laptop open after going to shower. I'm not usually a snooper, but her Gmail was open and a new email from her mom popped up with the subject, Next Steps. I shouldn't have looked, but I had to. The email laid out the timeline. 3 months of playing house, then start hunting houses in neighborhoods we couldn't afford. Get pre-approved for a mortgage using my income and credit, since Eden's credit was shot from maxed-out cards. Her mom had helped her hide that from me. Then buy a house, establish residency, file for divorce, and keep the house because I couldn't afford the payments alone. It was all there, like a twisted project plan. The last line said Jacob thinks the market in Lakeside Manor is heating up and attached 3 perfect listings. I closed the laptop, made another coffee, and sat at the kitchen table in the dark until Eden came out and asked why the lights were off. That's when I decided to be the silent builder. I'd always been a talker, but what do you do when the person you're supposed to talk to is plotting against you? You shut up and make your own plans. The next day, I called my buddy Beck, who runs a small crew. We've been friends since high school. I told him I had a special project and asked if he could meet me at my land that week. When Saturday came, I told Eden I was helping Beck remodel a bathroom. She barely looked up from her phone, just warned me to be careful with my back. I pulled up to the land, and Beck was there, coffee in hand, sitting on his truck's tailgate. He looked at me and said, I looked hammered, always had a way with words. I didn't tell him everything, just that Eden and I had problems and I needed to figure out what to do with the property. We walked the land, and I showed him the foundation I'd already laid for what was supposed to be our future home. The foundation was solid, well-built, and done right. I spent weekends perfecting it, imagining Eden and me building our life there. Beck asked me straight up if I was still building the house the way we planned. That was the first time I told someone the whole truth. The wedding speech, the phone call, the emails, the entire plan. Beck was sitting on a pile of wood covered with tarps, just staring at me. Then he used words about Eden. I can't repeat here, and told me I needed to talk to a lawyer immediately. He wasn't wrong. Monday morning, I took a rare day off work and met with a lawyer for the first time in 3 years. It was a family friend of my dad's, semi-retired but still running a small practice. I showed him the situation, the screenshots of emails, a recording of Eden talking to her mom about Jacob and the mortgage. Bernie, let's call him that, took off his glasses, rubbed his tired eyes, and said he'd seen lots of divorce cases, but never one planned so deliberately. Then he asked what I wanted to do. That was the real question. Do I confront Eden, file for divorce immediately, or try to save something that was already broken? Bernie advised me to gather evidence, limit financial damage, and think through my options carefully. But as I walked out, one thing stuck with me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about equal damage, it's about moving on. That's when a plan started forming in my mind. That evening, I went back to my land, sat on the tailgate of my truck, watching the sun set over the foundation. That land was mine, fully paid for, building permits only in my name, and I knew every contractor, supplier, and inspector within 50 miles. Over the next few days, the plan got clearer. I was going to build something Eden and Naomi never even imagined. I gathered a crew I trusted, people I'd known for years, told them it was a personal project and I'd need help evenings and weekends. They were ready. Even my boss, who was like a second dad to me, was on board. For the next 3 weeks, I lived a double life, playing the fool husband by day, building the spite house by night and weekends. The framing went up fast, the plumbing, electrical, and HVAC done by crews who only wanted a beer and BBQ for their help. I pulled every string for materials, some leftovers, some at contractor rates, some free. People pitched in as they saw my situation. Meanwhile, Eden's intentions became clearer. She casually mentioned Jacob to her mom, pulled up mortgage calculators on her laptop where I could see, talked about furniture for the bigger house. One night, she left her phone on the kitchen counter during her shower. Naomi's text popped up. Jacob found the house, showing tomorrow. I screenshot it, then put the phone back. All this evidence went into my file. The next day at work, my boss asked how I was doing. His voice held a genuine concern that broke me inside. I'd been running on anger and grit for so long I hadn't really felt cared for. I admitted I wasn't okay, but promised I'd be fine. I had to finish what I started. That weekend, things heated up. Eden announced her mom found the perfect starter home for us, and she'd take me to see it Sunday. I played along and said I had a surprise too, something big and important I was building for her. Eden's face looked strange, trying to seem excited but clearly suspicious. She asked what kind of surprise. I told her it was big. Her reaction said she thought I'd given in to their plan and would take the house. I said Sunday morning we'd see the house, then in the afternoon, I'd show my surprise. She agreed and texted her mom to change the schedule. Lying next to her that night, knowing she never really loved me, I felt a strange peace. The spite house was almost done. I had all the documents, and I hid my important papers and legacy at my parents' place. Sunday morning, Eden took forever, getting ready like she was preparing for a photo shoot. We met Naomi separately. Eden mentioned maybe going shopping too. I didn't care. Naomi showed us the house, exactly what I expected. Way out of our budget, in a neighborhood where every house looked the same. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, small yard where neighbors' voices carried. Jacob was there too, white teeth and firm handshake, like he was auditioning for a real estate show. I asked all the right questions, mortgage rates, property taxes, and Naomi kept saying, "Don't worry about the numbers, it'll all work out." Eden loved the walk-in closets and soaking tubs. After an hour, I checked my watch and said, it was time for my surprise. Eden tried to make excuses that she was tired, but I insisted. This was important to me. I told her I'd been working on it for weeks. Maybe my tone said something because she agreed. I said Naomi and Jacob could come too, the more the better. They were all confused but followed me in their cars. We left the fancy suburb behind and turned down the gravel road toward my land, farther from the city. In the rearview mirror, Eden's confused face grew with every mile. When we finally reached the land, I felt a mix of emotions, pain for what could have been, anger at the betrayal, but mostly a deep sense of peace. Anticipation built as we crested the small hill, and the spite house came fully into view. Behind me, I heard tires skid on gravel as Eden slammed on her brakes. I pulled up to the house, my creation, and parked. I got out casually and waited while Eden, Naomi, and Jacob slowly approached, their faces frozen in absolute shock. It wasn't anything like what they expected, or what anyone would expect. Their reactions made all the weeks of exhausting work totally worth it. But I'll have to tell you exactly what they saw and what happened next in part 3. This post, is already way too long, and my phone's about to die. I promise to update soon, probably tomorrow if work doesn't get crazy. Edit. Fixing some typos. Still getting used to typing long posts on mobile. Edit 2. Holy crap, front page. Thanks for all the awards and comments. Part 3 coming soon. Update 2. Sorry for the delay on this update, folks. Been dealing with some plumbing issues at my place. Nothing like a backed-up toilet at 2 a.m. to test your patience. Plus, my buddy's deck project turned into a whole weekend thing. Anyway, thanks for all the comments and messages. The support's been wild. So, where were we? Right, I just dropped the bomb on Eden and Naomi that I knew about their little scheme. The look on their faces is something I'll never forget. Like they'd both simultaneously bitten into something sour while getting caught with their hands in the cookie jar. Eden was the first to recover, switching tactics faster than my old truck shift gears, which is to say, not smoothly at all. She went from deer in the headlights to full-on waterworks in about 2 seconds flat. She started sobbing about how I was misunderstanding everything, how she loved me, and that she'd never do anything to hurt me. Meanwhile, Naomi's face turned an interesting shade of red. Not embarrassed red, but pissed off red, like how dare I catch them in their own plan. She started talking over Eden, accusing me of being paranoid and unstable, pointing at the ridiculous house I'd built. She actually said, "You'll be hearing from our lawyer," which made me laugh out loud. I reminded her that in our state we'd only been married a few weeks and that I'd documented all their scheming. Plus, I pointed out that the land and this ridiculous house were purchased and mostly built before I even met Eden, with my own money in my name only. It wasn't marital property. That shut them up pretty quickly. Legal threats only work when you have legal ground to stand on. Eden wiped away those fake tears and put on her sweetest voice, the one she used when she wanted something expensive. She said we could work this out, that maybe she'd reacted badly to the house, but we could sell it and find something we both liked. She claimed I was overreacting to a few harmless conversations with her mother. I just looked at her for a long moment. It was weird. Just a month ago, that voice and those eyes would have had me agreeing to anything. Now I felt nothing. Maybe a little sad at how easily she could switch emotions on and off like that. I told her simply that I wanted a divorce. I'd already spoken to a lawyer who was drawing up the papers. She could keep the ring and whatever she'd brought into the marriage, but everything else stayed with its rightful owner. Eden's face crumpled, then hardened when she realized the tears weren't working. That's when she got mean, saying, I was never good enough for her, that Jacob made 3 times what I did and wouldn't live in a clown house, her words, and that she'd been faking it in bed the whole time because I couldn't satisfy her. You know those movie moments where insults are supposed to cut deep and leave the hero devastated? This wasn't one of those. Honestly, I just felt relieved. Every nasty word out of her mouth confirmed I was making the right choice. Naomi joined in, saying I'd trapped her daughter with my pathetic fantasies of building a life together, that I was just jealous of people with real money and class, and that no woman with options would choose someone like me. I let them go, on a bit, partly because it was fascinating to watch their masks come off completely, and partly because they were saying all this in front of my phone's camera, which was quietly recording the whole thing. My lawyer suggested getting their true colors on video if possible. Mission accomplished. When they finally ran out of steam, I just shrugged and said it was time to go. Eden demanded to know if I was really going to make her live in that monstrosity. Until the divorce. I told her no, she could go back to our apartment, which was in my name, pack her things, and be out by tomorrow. She could stay with her mom, Jacob, or whoever else wanted to deal with her. That set off round 2 of the shouting match. Eden insisted she had rights to the apartment. Naomi threatened legal action again. I reminded them that in our state, without kids and with such a short marriage, and with all the evidence I had, Eden would be lucky if a judge didn't make her pay me alimony for wasting my time. That was BS. Obviously, no judge would award me alimony, but they didn't know that. I could see the wheels turning as they tried to figure out if I was bluffing. The drive back to the apartment was the most awkward 30 minutes of my life. Eden sat in stony silence in the driver's seat. Naomi kept trying to make phone calls in the back, probably to that lawyer they threatened me with, but couldn't get signal once we left the main road. I just stared out the window, feeling weirdly calm. When we got back, Eden stormed into the bedroom and slammed the door. Naomi told me this wasn't over, and that they'd make me regret treating her daughter that way. I just nodded and said she should probably help Eden pack. I spent the rest of the day sitting on the couch, scrolling through Reddit and occasionally answering texts from my buddy asking how the big reveal went. I could hear Eden and Naomi in the bedroom, alternating between angry whispers and the sounds of things being thrown into suitcases. Around dinner time, Eden emerged with red eyes and asked if we could talk privately. Naomi looked like she wanted to object, but Eden shot her a look and she backed off, saying she'd wait in the car. Once Naomi was gone, Eden sat beside me on the couch, closer than necessary. She wasn't crying anymore, but her voice was soft, almost like the Eden I thought I'd married. She asked if I was really sure about the divorce, said maybe we'd rushed into marriage without really knowing each other, and that she was willing to try counseling if I was. For a split second, and I'm not proud of this, I wavered. Not because I believed her, but because it's hard to just turn off feelings for someone, even when you know they've been playing you. Then she made a mistake. She reached out and put her hand on my thigh, letting it slide up just a bit, and said maybe we could talk about this in the bedroom first. Try to reconnect before making any big decision. And just like that, the spell. It was truly over for the woman who had been yelling at me just 2 hours earlier. Someone who had planned to use me and then leave. She thought she could just sleep with me and make everything disappear, like I was so desperate, so controlled by my hormones that sex would make me forget it all. I pushed her hand away and told her the divorce was non-negotiable. She needed to finish packing and be gone by morning, like we agreed. Her face went cold again. All softness vanished. She called me some choice names, said I'd regret this, the usual stuff, and then stormed back to the bedroom. They left about an hour later. Eden took more than just her clothes. I noticed a few small valuables missing, like the watch my grandfather gave me and a pair of wireless earbuds I just bought. It was petty, but not worth fighting over. Naomi didn't even glance at me as they walked out, just held her nose high like she was too good to acknowledge I existed. The apartment felt strangely calm once they were gone. I ordered pizza, cracked open a beer, and started a movie I'd been wanting to watch, but Eden had always blocked it. It was nice, different, but nice. That piece lasted about 17 hours. The next morning, my phone blew up. Texts from friends checking if I was okay. Instagram DMs from strangers asking what happened. Even an email from my old high school girlfriend saying she heard about it and was there if I needed to talk. Confused, I opened Facebook, and there it was. Eden had gone nuclear. A long post about how her husband of less than a month had abandoned her, tricked her into marriage under false pretenses, and built a spite house just to hurt her. She posted pictures of the yellow monstrosity from the worst angles, taken from the car when we first arrived. The comments were wild. Most of Eden's friends sympathized and called me every name in the book. A few were skeptical, asking for more details Eden wasn't sharing. My mom got into the fray defending me until my dad apparently told her to stop engaging with that nonsense. I closed the app without commenting. Let her have her social media moment. I had the truth, the evidence, and most importantly, my freedom. But Eden wasn't done. Next came texts directly to me, switching between angry demands for a proper settlement and tearful pleas saying she missed me and had made a terrible mistake. I blocked her number. Then she started showing up at my work, just passing by, when I was arriving or leaving. Once she even brought Jacob along, the ex she'd planned to leave me for. He looked uncomfortable, like he hadn't signed up for this drama. I almost felt sorry for him. After a few days, I was exhausted by the whole situation. My lawyer assured me the divorce was straightforward and would finalize soon, since we had no real assets or kids. But Eden kept dragging it out, contesting every little detail. The game changer was when Eden's friends started reaching out to me privately. At first, I ignored them, assuming they were just going to defend her. But then Haley, Eden's bridesmaid, sent me a long message saying she'd seen the real Eden and wasn't surprised by what happened. Turns out, Eden had pulled similar stunts with past boyfriends. Not the marriage part, but using guys for their money or status and then dumping them. Haley had watched it happen several times and finally got fed up. She offered to give a statement to my lawyer, if needed. Another friend came forward, then another. Apparently, Eden had a whole history of this behavior that her social media carefully hid. Her relationship with Naomi wasn't the loving mother-daughter bond they pretended. It was more like Naomi pulling the strings and Eden playing along. I didn't want to turn this into a huge public drama, so I just thanked them and passed their info to my lawyer for character witnesses if needed. Knowing I wasn't the only one who'd been fooled made me feel a little less dumb. The most surprising call came from Jacob, the ex. He reached out through a mutual friend, wanting to meet for a beer. Curious, I agreed. We met at a dive bar where neither Eden nor Naomi would dare show up. He looked nervous, kept checking the door like he expected them to burst in. He said he wanted me to know he wasn't part of their plan, that Eden contacted him after our wedding, calling me controlling and wanting out. He admitted they hooked up a couple of times but swore he didn't know she was using me for a house. Once he realized the truth, he cut things off, but Eden wouldn't stop calling. Now he was scared she'd try to use him the same way. I don't know if I believed everything, but he seemed genuinely shaken. We talked for a couple hours, comparing notes on Eden's manipulation. By the end of the night, we weren't friends, exactly, but there was a weird kind of brotherhood in having dodged the same bullet. As Jacob was leaving, he said something that stuck with me. Eden and Naomi were telling people they planned to sue me for the Yellow House, claiming Eden had contributed a lot through her design ideas, even though she hadn't seen it before. That day, I laughed it off, but the next morning, I decided to take extra precautions. I called my lawyer and asked what I needed to do to make sure Eden couldn't touch my property. He suggested a few legal steps, and that's when I had an idea, a way to finally close this mess and stop Eden and Naomi from twisting the story. I made some calls, pulled a few strings, and set things in motion. 3 days later, I invited a select group to the Yellow House. My parents, a couple close friends who stood by me, Haley, and on a whim, Jacob. I didn't tell them why, just asked them to meet me there at noon on Saturday. The surprise on their faces when they saw the yellow monstrosity was priceless, but the real shock was still to come. I'll tell you what happened next in the final update. This is already long, and I have to go help my buddy fix his Wi-Fi router. Why do people always think I know how to fix tech just because I'm good with tools? But I promise the conclusion is worth the wait. So, it's been about 8 months since everything with Eden and Naomi blew up, and I finally got time to finish this story. My buddy has been pestering me nonstop to wrap it up. He's literally sitting on my couch right now playing Elden Ring and occasionally yelling, "Finish!" First off, thanks to everyone who supported the earlier parts. Reading your comments really helped me make sense of all this. Who knew strangers online could be more understanding than your own wife? Anyway, here's how everything unfolded after the big reveal. The days after the house was exposed were strangely quiet. That night, Eden came back to the apartment after spending hours with her mom, trying to process everything. I was already there, calmly packing some things. She walked in looking exhausted and puffy-eyed, just standing in the doorway watching me. I kept folding my clothes like she wasn't even there. Finally, she broke the silence and asked where I was going. I told her I'd be staying with my friend Beckett for a while until we figured things out. She nodded as if it made perfect sense, then surprised me by saying she wanted to try counseling. Yeah, after all the scheming, lies, and even plans to divorce me that I uncovered, she suddenly wanted to save our marriage. I almost laughed but held it together and asked why she suddenly wanted to fix something she'd been actively ruining since before we even got married. Her answer was interesting. She said she'd gotten caught up in her mom's expectations and plans, that deep down she cared about me but was confused about what she really wanted. She said seeing how much effort I put into building, even if it was a crazy monstrosity, made her realize I was serious about our future. For a split second, I almost believed her. Then I remembered the phone call I overheard, how she laughed at her mom's cruel wedding toast, the credit check she ran without telling me, and the texts with Jacob I'd seen on her phone. I told her counseling wasn't going to fix this. Nothing would. I'd already filed for divorce and the papers would be delivered to her tomorrow. Her face changed so fast it was frightening. The tearful, repentant act disappeared and was replaced by cold fury. She warned me I'd regret this, said no one just throws away a relationship like that, and that I was making the biggest mistake of my sorry life. I just shrugged, zipped up my bag, told her she had 2 weeks to find somewhere else to live since the apartment was in my name, and left while she kept yelling. The divorce itself was surprisingly simple. I had all the proof of her lies well documented and organized. My lawyer, recommended by my boss whose brother does family law, was excellent. Eden tried to fight it at first, making wild claims of emotional abuse and abandonment, but her lawyer must have convinced her because they finally agreed on a clean split with no alimony. The best part was during the one mediation session. Eden's lawyer claimed I wasted marital assets by building that yellow monstrosity. My lawyer calmly explained that I bought the land before we even started dating, did most of the work myself, and used salvaged materials. Plus, the property value actually increased despite the weird house because of rising real estate prices. The mediator asked for proof of the property's value, and I handed over an appraisal from the week before. It turned out the land alone was worth almost 3 times what I paid 5 years earlier. The odd house wasn't really an issue since any serious buyer would just tear it down anyway. The mediator even smiled when he saw the photos attached to the appraisal. Eden's face when she realized I was walking away with a valuable asset, while she got nothing? Priceless. Probably the same look she'd planned for me to have when she left me for Jacob after getting a mortgage in both our names. Speaking of Jacob, it turns out he wasn't as invested in their plan as Eden thought. About a month after I moved out, a mutual friend told me Jacob started dating someone else, a real estate client with actual money, not schemes. Eden apparently had a meltdown at his office, and security had to escort her out. Naomi's reputation took a hit too. She always acted like a classy, wealthy widow looking out for her daughter, but once word got around about her schemes, and trust me, in our mid-sized city, word travels fast. People started connecting the dots. It turns out she'd done similar things before, pushing Eden to date men with good financial prospects, then helping Eden take whatever she could before moving on. Nothing illegal, but definitely manipulative and unethical. Several women in Naomi's social circle quietly distanced themselves. Her invite to the country club charity committee vanished. She was still invited to events but no longer sat at the good tables. As for me, life got way better. I stayed with Beckett temporarily, but found my own small place within 2 months while figuring out my next steps. Work picked up, my boss gave me more responsibility and a nice raise after seeing how I handled everything. Turns out, emotional. Stability and not being scammed by your wife make you more productive. Who knew? I decided to hold on to the land for now. My crew and I spent a few weekends tearing down that yellow monstrosity, which oddly felt therapeutic, and cleaning up the property. I'm thinking about building the house I originally planned, maybe just for me, or selling it when the market's right. No rush. Dating has been weird. I was upfront about my divorce with the first woman I asked out, expecting it to be a deal breaker, but she was surprisingly understanding. She said her sister had gone through something similar and got it. We went out a few times but didn't really connect. I've been on a few more first dates since then, nothing serious, but it's nice to remember not every woman is running a scam. The most unexpected thing happened about 3 months ago at Home Depot. I literally bumped carts with someone and started apologizing before looking up. It was Haley, Eden's former maid of honor. Awkward doesn't even cover it. She looked shocked to see me, and I was about to just nod and walk away when she blurted out she'd wanted to contact me for months to apologize. She said she knew some of what Eden was planning, but not the full extent, and she'd felt terrible ever since. We ended up getting coffee, and she told me she had a falling out with Eden about 2 months after we split. Apparently, Eden expected all her friends to take her side automatically, and when Haley suggested Eden should reflect on her own actions, Eden went nuclear and cut her off completely. Haley and I have become unlikely friends. Nothing romantic. She's engaged to a guy who seems genuinely nice, but it's been healing to talk to someone who actually knew Eden well and can confirm I wasn't crazy or paranoid. She filled me in on some of the aftermath from Eden's side, stuff I wouldn't have known otherwise, like how Eden and Naomi had to downsize to a smaller apartment because they couldn't afford the old place without my income. Or how Eden had to put her advanced certification on hold because she couldn't get approved for loans. Turns out, Jacob was stringing both of them along, never intending to be Eden's backup plan. Eden herself has tried reaching out twice. The first time was through a mutual friend, asking if we could talk about what happened. I said no. The second time was more direct. She showed up at my new place unannounced. Still not sure how she got the address. Luckily, I wasn't home, but my neighbor said she sat in her car outside for almost an hour before leaving. I've heard through the grapevine that she's telling anyone who'll listen that I tricked her and wasted a year of her life. She conveniently leaves out the part where she planned to use me for a mortgage, then ditch me. Classic Eden. Naomi seems to have accepted defeat more gracefully, probably because she's busy trying to save face. Last I heard, she's heavily involved in some church group, playing the devoted mother supporting her daughter through a difficult divorce. I'm sure she's already scouting for Eden's next target. As for me, life goes on. The house I'm renting has a nice yard where I've started growing tomatoes and peppers. My buddy's dog visits sometimes, and I'm thinking about getting one of my own. Work's steady, I'm saving up again, and I started playing basketball. On Thursdays with some coworkers, nothing crazy, just normal stuff that feels good after all the drama. Oh, and I did one more thing for closure. Remember those original house plans I'd drawn up for Eden and me? I finally dug them out of storage, looked them over one last time, then shredded them while drinking a beer on my back porch. After that, I grabbed a fresh notepad and started sketching something new. Just for me. It's smaller, more practical, with a killer workshop and a covered deck for rainy days. No clue when I'll build it, but it feels good to plan something that's not tied to lies or manipulation. I still get moments when something reminds me of Eden or the whole mess, and I feel a flash of anger or sadness. My buddy says that's normal and it'll happen less as time goes on. He's probably right. 8 months isn't long in the grand scheme of things. If there's any lesson in all this, it's to trust your gut. I knew something was off the first time I met Naomi, but I ignored it because I was so caught up in Eden. I ignored all the red flags because I wanted so badly to believe I'd found someone who truly cared about me. Next time, if there is one, I'll pay more attention to those little warning signs. The way someone treats waitstaff, how they talk about their exes, whether their actions match their words. The stuff that seems small in the moment, but adds up to who a person really is. Anyway, that's the end of my story. Thanks for reading all 4 parts and for all the support in the comments. Writing this out helped more than I expected. My Buddy's now telling me to close my laptop and help him with the boss fight he's stuck on, so I guess that's my cue. Life goes on, right?